Hi, today I want to talk about synthetic souls, how it's related to the word population, and a few other topics that have just been coming up lately. So we should probably start with, what can we start with? The recent outage, maybe? I don't know who was impacted by it or who was affected by it, but for me personally, on that particular day, I was actually still on an island, which is part of Long Island, very close to here, just a few hours away from here. And I personally didn't even really know about this outage until I was making my way back. And I met some people on the ferry and the train ride back who were just talking about it. And it was just so fascinating how when you're living unplugged for a few days and you try to enter civilization again, everything breaks down, chaos erupts. And I think that was just the case when it happened a few days ago. But basically, on this particular island, everything's still very old school. And it reminded me of 10, 15 years ago and how the old New York was still, because I feel New York has just changed so much over the past, it changes every day, but over the past 10, 15 years for sure. I feel we went through this period where you had the New York, at least since I've been here, you had the New York up until 2014. And then there was a change somehow where a lot of the real estate was just bought up by Chinese companies or Chinese people in general who were just parking their money. And then we had the switch around 2016 again, and then 2018 was another major one where the super duper gentrification happened, especially in certain parts of Brooklyn and Queens. And then, of course, 2020 and on, everything changed once again. And I do feel the real estate is always a good indicator of how AI tries to overtake a city or just a landmass in general, not just here, but also all over. It's for sure also happened in Florida, it's happened in Mexico City, it's happened in Europe. Berlin 10 years ago was still one of the cheapest cities out there, and now it's just massively exploded since 2013 on too. So pretty much every single where, Sydney, all those areas. And so this particular island in Long Island was old school in a form that New York City had been, I want to say when I first got here, like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, around like 15ish years ago when I remember going out and everyone just wanted cash and no one really was encouraging paying cards, as opposed to that one experience I had, which I talked about earlier this year, where I was trying to go to a bathhouse and they were really discouraging cash. They were saying, oh, you have to download an app if you don't have a card, or you have to pay with your credit card and pay all these fees on top of that. So as opposed to that experience, it was actually quite nice to go somewhere where they were doing the opposite. They were like, if you're paying card, you're going to have this added bonus percentage of so and so much. Or some of the small businesses there, let's just say you want to have ice cream out of a mom and pop ice cream shop, or you're just going to a restaurant, or you're just going to one of those small convenience stores that they had on these islands. Anyhow, if you just wanted to do that, a lot of them didn't really even accept a card. There were ATMs in certain places, but people just know to bring cash when you go there. I found it very organic. And like I said, I already spent a few days there this time around, and everything felt organic. You're just unplugging, not being on your phone, not really checking anything really, not being on a laptop or a screen in general. It's right at the beach, so you can do beach walks. My dog had a really good time too, even though she doesn't like the beach that much. But in general, everything just feels more organic. Obviously, there's Wi-Fi there, there's data coverage there, there's cell phone coverage, everything. But still, if you're just surrounded by the ocean and all these stores that accept cash or want cash, somehow I felt I was projected into the past and how things used to be in a lot of areas all over the world. And nowadays, people even just swipe their phone if they want to enter like a subway, or they swipe their phone to pay for their restaurant bill, especially in Europe. That's been around for quite a while already. Same in Australia, just, oh, there's tap on, swipe, this and that. There's no connection to the actual currency, as opposed to when you hold the currency in your hands. Not only do you see the face depicted on it, because the face in and of itself is, of course, a program, as we know, but just holding the tangible currency in your hands and feeling what money actually feels like, and then handing it to a real person who then either has to give you cash back or, whatever they do, either in coins or in banknotes, like that entire interaction a lot of people don't even really know anymore. You know, nowadays, some people don't even know how to count the change in cash, especially the younger generations, but also other generations. You know, I went into a convenience store around here where I live, and this person, I don't know how old they were, I'm guessing like 50 or 60. They were from a different country though. They were, I'm assuming, from one of the Arabic countries. And I just feel, I don't want to say they weren't educated. I don't want to say they were dumb or not educated, but I kind of feel it was part of that, because they gave me change. It already happened twice. They gave me change back and it was always wrong. And they didn't do it on purpose. I know that for a fact. You know, there's this purposely giving you a wrong change back just so that they can skimp on money. But no, in this case, this person really didn't know. And I felt that it had to do with their background of not being good in math, or not having taught how to do math properly in the school wherever they were, and from whatever country they were. And I don't know if it was Yemen or one of those countries, but I really do feel that was a lack of educational system. The entire cash interaction, it was just so nice. And just coming back from all of that, it made me realize how much this city and also other areas in the world really have changed, especially the closer you are to these huge civilizations, no matter where you really are, right? Unless you're really on a tiny, tiny island. Maybe Hawaii is still very much like cash oriented too, because Hawaii is kind of backwards in the past in certain parts as well. Not in a bad way, by the way, but it's just, it was that case when I was there a few years ago. So, you know, maybe these like secluded areas are still more organic than others, is what I'm thinking. But unfortunately, a large portion of the world just has been overtaken by this inorganic swipe everything. Some people are even paying their rent and other things in crypto right now, you know, which crypto is such a scam currency. It's not even like anything. It's backed by nothing and is highly controlled by 3-letter agencies. So yeah, interesting how everything has changed over the past 10 plus years. I mean, less than 10 years in a lot of parts, but for sure 10 plus years in other areas. That was nice, and I wanted to share that and maybe have a comment to add. Now, I wanted to talk about synthetic souls. I'm going to read a comment here from my notes. I feel this reality that we're currently in, you know, call it the earth realm or wherever we really are, the earth reality where we keep getting recycled and over and over and over again. This is really the only reality where all of us, the souls and the soulless beings, are looking like humans, or look like we're all part of the same, you know, the same group, right? Other than skin color, eye color, hair color, there's no real discrimination of, oh, you look like an alien, you look like an ET, you look like a robot. So all of us look human, but there are so many robots in a human meat suit, or just this human disguise. And this is possibly the only reality we all look the same, but really aren't. So let's just say we were in these other realities or civilizations before. I mean, some people are talking about, oh, the Orion star systems or whatever it was, which all of that has been taken over by AI. At least that's what I've gotten a little while ago. Let's just say you were in that for whatever reason. You would look a certain way, but then a robotic AI entity would look different, and you would be able to differentiate right away. Yeah, that person doesn't belong here, or that being doesn't really belong here, wherever you were before. So hope that makes sense. So in this reality, I feel it is really that one reality where the robots are just really mixing with the organic souls, and you have all these synthetic souls just taking over the world. And, you know, I started talking about this, what, 4+ years ago. I had a lot of videos on the other channel about it. I even had this one video where I was just showing how pretty much the entire Kardashian clan and other celebrities, not just celebrities though, also your regular neighbor, are literally just those beings, the robotoids, the robots, the synthetic souls. And by synthetic, I mean more like the AI. It's not even a real soul. It's just, you know, AI created, lab created beings that look like humans, but then very clearly you can see it in the eye. You can also see it in other things. Some literally have the energy or the aura of a robot. You know, I come across that a lot too, especially here, because I feel this entire city, back then I got like 80% of the city is inorganic, and you might have 20% of people that are organic. But if you go outside to other places, the ratio could be 70 to 30%. So 70% of people around you are pretty much robotoids or soulless beings. And that might, we might have to do another video on that, because it's a bit more complex than just saying, oh, this is what it is and this is how it is. And I do feel the more you go to these larger cities, the more inorganic type of people it attracts. But because there's so much going on in these type of cities, especially this particular city, all the events, all the culture, all this and that, it also attracts a lot of souls in a form or another, at least for a little while. Whereas if you were just to go in a very rural area where nothing's really going on, that can get quite boring for people too. So in general, the push is to get people more into the city environments anyhow, and all these agendas that are behind that as well. But at the same time, that's kind of where everything's happening, right? Still happening, even in the past 4+ years. That really is where things happen occurring. And I really do think that our world population, just looking at how it's changed over the past 100, 200 years, you can very clearly see how little we were, how many people there were compared to now. Where are all these souls coming from, right? Like, it's impossible for 100 million, like from a 10 million to 100 million population in certain countries. Why did it explode in that way, and where are all these souls coming from? It's just not possible. They must be inorganic. So let's just take Turkey as an example. In 1800, Turkey had a population of 9.8 million, and that in and of itself has not changed a lot. So when you look at the development of Turkey, 1800, 9.8 million, and then 100 years later, 1920, 10 million, 13 million, all of a sudden it just explodes. Like 100 years, within the past 100 years, for 200 years straight, it's been pretty much the same. But then in the past 100 years, it goes from 10 million all the way to what they have now, 84 million, which is more than even the German population. And Germany has not exploded in that way. So Turkey's mysteriously exploded from 10 million or less than 10 million, which was pretty consistent for hundreds and hundreds of years, 8 times, more than 8 times over the past 50, 60, 40 years, to 84 million. Where are all these supposed new souls coming from? And no, they're not the volunteers coming here, just as deceivers like Dolores Cannon and other New Agers, they always like to say that, oh yeah, it's all the volunteers. No, there's literally not that many souls around. Like, it's impossible. So all of these must be inorganic created souls, is my point. And perhaps 100 or 200 years ago, it must have been a very different world we were living in, but it must have felt way more organic than over the past 100 years. And it must have been so good just to walk among that. And every person you're actually seeing and greeting is a soul, as opposed to now, where you have a very small percentage that is an actual soul you're interacting with. And the rest are just all these background characters filling up your space, or random friends who really have no soul. In Germany in 1900, the population was 56 million. And nowadays, it's a little bit less than Turkey. It's like 83.8 million. It's closer to 84 million. So from 1900 to now, over the past 120 years, 56 million to 83 million. It's still a little bit of a jump, but not a super humongous jump the way you saw in Turkey, right? And you did have World War II and everything in between, but despite all of that, it's still steadily increased, which also makes you wonder what really happened during World War II. People didn't really, supposedly people passed away, but the population didn't increase substantially. So what's going on with that story as well? But do not want to discuss that in this particular video. Anyhow, Germany, 56 million, 1910, 64 million, 1870, 40. So it went from 40, 56, 64, and on and on and on to what is now 83 million. And from what I remember 20 years ago in school, they were telling us, oh yeah, Germany's population is around 80 million or 82 million. 20 years later, it's still the same. So nothing has really changed with that. But in Turkey, it has. Also the same in Egypt. Egypt went from 1900 to, which was 10 million, to nowadays, which is 111 million. That is substantial, a very substantial increase. And let's just say these numbers are correct, which obviously we don't know, but let's just say they are. And I think to a certain extent they may be, because something must have happened over the past 100 years where all these populations just exploded. And a person said to me, oh, it's just because, in Western Europe, or maybe also in the US and all those areas, they didn't have as many children the way that these Arab cultures do, these Muslim cultures, or other cultures in general. But I don't think that's the sole reason. I really do think a lot of these inorganic characters are coming in through a lot of these countries, possibly every single country. I think even in Germany and the US, obviously. But they're coming into all these countries now, and you see this huge increase, especially in these Middle Eastern or Arabic countries where you almost can't ignore it anymore. So Egypt went from 10 million, and 120 years later, they're at 111 million. Come on, that's almost impossible. Like, what's really going on there? The US, it's a bit harder to differentiate what's really going on, because in 1900 the US was 76 million, and nowadays supposedly 333.3 million, which that's a satanic number, 333.3. Yeah. Anyhow, let's just say it's correct. We are at around 330 people here in the US. It's a bit harder because a lot of people just emigrated over these past 120 years. I'm not talking about the illegal migrants and immigrants that came, but I'm literally talking about everyone just came over in the 1920s and 1940s. So the US has always been a bit different from other countries because no one necessarily just comes over in a boat to Germany or Turkey, unless they're Syrians who flee there and hope for a better life or whatever. But the US has always been that type of continent and country, and parts of Canada too. But I don't think Canada has even increased that much the way the US has. But the US has always pretty much been that area in the world where people were always trying to go and start over new. So it's not surprising that that number has increased to a certain extent. It still has not gone up to the same extent it has in India and China, though. And China, supposedly in 1900, was around 395 million, so around 400 million. Nowadays, it's closer to 1.4 billion, which is more than 3 times as much. And I'm not sure about India, but India is at around the same. India right now is at 1.4 billion. It's more than China, but I'm not sure what they were like in the 1900s. So China is estimated, they actually want to depopulate China, and they're saying they want China to be more at 770 million over the next 50, 60, 70 years. At least some articles are saying that. Yeah, I mean, India supposedly was at 300 million, and they accounted for approximately 40% of the world population. Also interesting, India and China, which supposedly where all of that spirituality originated to a certain extent, but not really, because a lot of it was also pseudo spirituality. Anyhow, those have really blown up, and I do strongly believe, I mean, I think it's clear that these can't all be souls, no matter where you are. I mean, such increases, I mean, what's really happening? Where are all these people coming from? It doesn't make sense. In order to enter, you supposedly need a soul if you are organic. So it's just 10 times, like 4 billions of times. It's not possible. At least in my opinion, it's not. And I'm not trying to sound derogative or anything. It's just a fact, So let's go through. Yeah, there was this really, before we go into Ashur or Ashur, there was this article right here on ABC News where they're literally saying scientists have confirmed a cave in the moon not far from where Neil Armstrong, I just reversed those letters, right? And Buzz Aldrin landed 55 years ago, and suspect there are hundreds more that could house future astronauts. An Italian-led team reported on Monday that there's evidence for a sizable cave accessible from the deepest known pit on the moon. It's located at the Sea of Tranquility, just 250 miles from Apollo 11's landing site. I had a video out about 2 years ago where I was talking about how we're in this cave reality. Some people still say we're in a dome reality. I don't agree with that. I think we're in this huge, massive cave. And all these documentaries there are on this like humongous cave in Vietnam. I forgot what it's called, but the largest size cave that you can find on Earth right now. At least that's what they're saying, where there were these steps carved into it. And also when I was talking about the Icelandic video, how they have churches underground, everything, all of that is a symbol of us literally being in a cave. And there are caves inside a cave inside of cave, basically that. So I really do feel when you have all these things released, like articles or posts online where they're talking about, oh, a cave on a moon, which nothing on the moon really matters because the moon is literally a reflection of Earth. The moon has canyons and rivers, and they're all in the same position that they are from the person, whoever's looking at it. So I was talking to this one photographer who he really didn't believe it, or he didn't really catch up to reality. But he was even telling me how he was, you know, you have all those telescopic lenses and everything. I forgot which one he particular worked with, maybe a 500 millimeter or 700 millimeter, one of those huge ones that you can barely even carry because they're so heavy. And this is back in no, it must, well, it's not even that long ago. Anyhow, he was been collecting them for a few years already. He was talking about how he could very clearly see the canyons, the rivers, and all these things in it. And when he was talking about it, because he was around California, Arizona at that time, all it reminded me was, oh, but you have all of that exactly in the area that you are at right now. So you're just looking at a reflection through your telescopic lens when you're taking pictures of the moon. So when they're saying scientists have confirmed a cave on the moon, they're just confirming yet another cave reality that we're in. At least in my opinion, they are, from what I've gotten so far. Ashur or Ashur. So we had Ashura or Ashura, which is the Islamic holiday that was earlier in July. By the way, July is a very difficult month. And July for most of the world population, whatever number that really is, let's just say it really is those few billion people they say it is. But for around 87% of the world population, we are in the Northern Hemisphere, around 13%, which is the minority. You're in the Southern Hemisphere, so you're experiencing winter. The majority of people are experiencing summer in July. July is one of the hardest, most frictionless, most angry months because around this point in time, at least for the Northern Hemisphere people have been really fed up with the heat. There's usually a whole bunch of heat waves, no matter what year you're in. There's usually all these heat waves. People are fed up with it. In certain years, you also have eclipse season happening during the summer, not so much over the past couple of years, but before that, you really did. And to top it all off, in this particular year, we're also going to have a Mercury retrograde shadow. So we're currently in it already, and it's happening in the beginning of August until the end of August. It's really not ideal. July can be a very difficult month right now for the majority of people who are experiencing this entire heat wave. Just emotions really coming up. A lot of angry people, like the honking and people shouting at each other. In case you've noticed that, it has to do with a bunch of things, not just the ways the stars are aligned, but I really do feel it has to do with just the heat in general. And it's no coincidence that they're trying to do this during the month of sovereignty, which is like Independence Day just occurred in the US, and Canada had their little celebration too. And then you had France with Bastille Day, and there's a few other countries that are celebrating their independence during this time of year. I don't think it's a coincidence at all that they're trying to hijack our emotions, especially during this time. But July in general seems to be a very difficult month. Now, in this particular July, we had Ashura happening, or Ashura. I have no idea how you pronounce that. Maybe some people know. And Ashura is a day of commemoration in Islam. So it's a Muslim holiday. It's only one day. It occurs annually on the 10th of Muharram, the first month of the Islamic calendar. For Sunni Muslims, Ashura marks the parting of the Red Sea by Moses and the salvation of the Israelites. Also very difficult right now. And obviously this is different each year. But what is very difficult right now is this entire Gaza conflict still blowing up in people's faces and, having these type of holidays. So Ashura comes from what? It has it in it. The god Ashur, Ashur. I'm just going to pronounce it Ashur because that feels more natural to me. And Ashur is an Assyrian, Sumerian god. And it's spelled the exact same way the city of Assur is. And Assur is in northern Iraq. which used to be Babylonian land. Let me look up exactly where it was. Can't look it up right now. Okay, it's very hard to navigate this interface, right, for whatever reason. Anyhow, Ashura or Ashura is related. You know, I feel that's really how they hijack all these religions too. So obviously I'm not pro-religious or anything, but giving a bit of background, you know, all these holidays, like Islam is one of the most recent religions out there. When was it founded? Supposedly in the year 610. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a certain numerology, 610, how random, right? Supposedly Muhammad at the age of 40, he climbed upon that mountain and was enlightened and all of that. But it's a very recent religion compared to the other ones that have been around for way longer. And just look at how many people it's brainwashed already. Yeah, I know everyone is brainwashed by some sort of religion, unless you're outside of the religions, which I'm assuming a lot of people watching this channel are, but maybe not. I do feel there's still a lot of Christians watching this channel for whatever reason. So Islam is a very recent religion. And this particular holiday is derived from the gods' names. And I feel a lot of holidays, no matter what religion, they always lead back to these strange gods, which no one really knows at all what they really do, what they're about. But this god in particular, Ashur or Ashur, was the god of Assyria, storms, and war. And this is happening right now in the month of July, which is already a pretty frictionless month due to a lot of people just feeling super angry, annoyed, or whatever with the heat. It's a national god of the Assyrians in ancient times until they gradually converted to Christianity. It was also the first capital of the Assyrian Empire. And that was in northern Iraq, which it's almost impossible. Right now it's called Kalachirkat, above the Tigris River in Mesopotamia. It's impossible to go to these sites unless you want to risk your life. I guess Iraq is still okay. Afghanistan's not okay. But it's almost impossible to go to these sites because they bombed everything to the ground, every single remnant of spirituality in these areas. And the ones that you really want to go to, you have to go through a million checkpoints, especially in Iraq. And at one of those checkpoints, like if you want to look at the original Tower of Babel or one of the Babylonian structures, which they're not saying it's the original one, but you can feel it. Like I saw pictures of it when people went there in a group and everything. You can feel it through the images, even like the power of those structures. In order to get there, you have to go through 3 to 5 checkpoints. And at the last checkpoint, you actually have to leave your passport there and trust that you're going to get it back on your way back. And if not, you might be stuck in Iraq forever, but most likely they will give it back to you. They just ask a whole bunch of annoying questions. They probably want to see, you know, oh, where's your website, YouTube channel, whatever you have, similar to the way they ask it in Israel. So very, very intrusive, not easy to get to. And there's also a metaphysical meaning of Ashur, straightforward observation of the laws, harmonious, gracious, happy, a level place, a plain, a step, mighty one, a hero. So they need a hero for this particular holiday. Level, ongoing. Yeah. And what's the symbol for the god Ashur? A horned cap borrowed from Anu and Enlil, and the snake dragon symbol adapted from the Babylon chief god Marduk. I guess that's all you need to know, a horned cap. So basically like the devil's cap and the snake dragon symbol from Marduk. Yeah, all of these are just these demonic, devil-like entities. And they tie that into religion. They tie that into their own holiday. Welcome to hell on earth is basically what they're trying to do. I came across this particular image. I think this is in Germany. And someone posted it saying, oh, I don't really understand why there's a wall. Then there's this stone and there's another wall around it. And this person obviously had no clue about the mud floods and how things were just built on top of it once the mud flood was gone. For me, this is a very clear sign. Everything in Europe, no matter how old the structures are supposedly what they say they are in museums and everything, it's all, the entire history has been so muddled up. But this is a very clear evidence that whatever we're being taught is not correct. and that you had maybe a structure beneath here and then something flooded over it and people just built right on top of that, like the newer structure, maybe just a few hundred years old, not even 1,000 years old. So evidence of the mud floods, even in Germany. And I believe that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. There were a few other comments below videos, but we might talk about that in a different video. And I feel this could be enough for one video at least. I hope this helped someone. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good one. Let me know if this resonates. Until the next one.